Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. We are the Hologrumps. I'm Liam.
And I'm Colm.
And we're here today to talk to you about the last short trek of Season 2, which has just aired on CBS All Access, called The Children of Mars. Ooh. Now this episode was written by Christian Bale, Alex Kurtzman, and Jenny Lumet, which is a lot of people for this particular short trek, and directed by Mark Pellington. Now, Colm, what did you think of this short trek?
I think this short trek was a complete and utter rip-off. First of all, the music in it, I was so surprised to hear Peter Gabriel's rendition of Heroes, which featured heavily in Stranger Things. Very surprised to see that. A lot of people might know that scene.
Yeah, because that scene obviously builds up to something very important. And they tried to do the same thing with this episode of the short trek. But I think they actually spoiled the entire episode in the trailer. If I remember correctly, it shows all of this. It shows them bullying each other. It shows them holding hands at the end. It shows the attack on Mars. I think the only thing we found out was that these children, of course in the title, are children of Mars because their parents are working on Mars. And I think the episode is set on Earth. So I think that's the only thing we found out. What do you think?
The issue, most of this is based around schoolyard bullying, based around kids in their own little environment, bullying each other. And the issue I had with all of this is the fact that no one stepped in to stop it. Nobody got in their way. They were just allowed to knock seven hells out of each other, and everyone just watched. My school would have had everyone joining in, or at the very least trying to stop it.
I don't know. In my school, it would have just been a ring would have formed around the people fighting, and everyone would have just watched. So I didn't have a problem with that scene necessarily. And the fact that they were allowed to fight for a little while seemed common enough for a fight that's happening around a set of lockers. It just seemed typical enough for me.
But the strangest thing is the fact that they're actually throwing punches.
Yeah, the punches was what was funny.
They're throwing stage combat punches full on, as if the school trained them how to punch. Because they do a really good job of flooring each other as opposed to hair pulling.
Yeah, and I don't think this episode in particular gives us a lot to talk about. I don't know if anyone has bothered reading the Countdown comics that are meant to lead into Star Trek Picard, which are meant to be required reading. I mean, it's very strange giving us a new series that picks up right after 2009 Star Trek. I don't particularly like the idea of making us read these comics.
It's a cash cow. As simple as that. They're
Yes.
making you read the comics simply because they want to make extra money off it.
Yeah, and the other reason is because they just didn't know how to make such a large shift between Nemesis and what the new Star Trek Picard is going to be.
The new status quo, I suppose you could call it.
Yeah, set the scene. I mean, it's been 18 years since we saw Picard in Star Trek Nemesis.
And he's definitely aged a bit, but we're getting ahead of ourselves there. I suppose we can just briefly touch on the comics. Liam has read them. I haven't. Liam, what do you think of the comics?
Well, the comics lead us into what happened here. In the first comic, we see Admiral Picard talking to Geordi LaForge, who is overseeing the Utopia Planitia shipyards. And we know from this first comic that this shipyard is here so they can build very quick ships to help save all of the Romulans. Because a star is going to go supernova, as we saw in 2009 Star Trek, and Picard is overseeing the rescue attempt. So he goes off to a secret planet in Romulan space, where he meets the governor. He is told that he's going to rescue about 10,000 people, but it turns out there's an entire race of about 4.5 million indigenous species there, all sentient life. And Picard says we can't just leave them here. But the Romulans are just saying, oh, they're only some primitive species, it doesn't matter. It's a waste of your efforts to save them. So they get into a bit of an argument. Picard gets arrested, and then the governor, and this is just ridiculous, beams aboard the Admiral's ship with her second in command and the lieutenant there, who's in charge of the biggest ship in Starfleet at this point, the USS Verity, just brings them to the captain's ready room and says, you can send a secret transmission from here. And she says to her second in command, I forget the name of this guy, send the message. And he hacks into the computer and shuts down everything on board the USS Verity. And it was just like, oh, come on. I mean, that's just ridiculous. The lieutenant brings them straight into the captain's ready room to send a message where they can hack into the entire ship. So straight away, I knew that they probably got the coordinates for the shipyard from there, which means that then they can either lead the Romulan attack force to the Utopia Planitia shipyards, or they'll just fly there themselves and blow it up.
Well, I suppose it's not that difficult to find, considering it's just on Mars.
Yeah, but I don't know if they knew it was on Mars at this point.
The biggest difference I noticed is the shape of the Romulan ships. They're very, very different to what we've seen before. They're very flat, they're very angular, as opposed to being birds of prey. I suppose this is to do probably with the 25% different CBS.
Well, I don't know at this point if the 25% difference is still in effect after the Viacom-CBS merger.
The episode ends with a very funny throwback that myself and Liam laughed about. Do you want to take it away, Liam?
Captain Picard reacts to Mars attacks.
Yes.
So I just imagine Jean-Luc Picard sitting down watching the film Mars Attacks and having a good laugh, recording himself live on a webcam, just like us.
Right now.
We're very low. It's a very melancholy experience talking about this short track because there wasn't an awful lot to talk about. It was basically a music video.
Aesthetics, did it look like Star Trek, Liam?
No, it didn't look anything like Star Trek. It just looked like... It looked like generic sci-fi.
Did it sound like Star Trek? No, because there was a music video.
I'd never heard that type of music before in Star Trek. And, of course, they had the principal of the school. I imagine he was the principal. I couldn't quite tell if he was a Romulan or a Vulcan because of how they've slightly changed the aesthetics of the show. He could have been a Vulcan. He could have been a Romulan. He was a bit expressive for a Vulcan.
Yes. It was actually very expressive for a Vulcan. He was quite in shock for the whole thing. And then at one point he looks around as if he's the one that did it, and looks really suspicious.
Well, how do you think this will tie into Star Trek Picard?
I think this is going to inform us basically of the backstory of it. Why he retired, why he walked away from Starfleet. I don't think he walked away because they were attacked. I reckon he walked away because of the comics.
Yes, I think that could be the case. That Picard feels largely responsible for the destruction of the Utopia Planitia shipyards and all of the lives lost there because they got the information for the shipyards off of Picard's computer. It's also possible, and we don't know about this, but Patrick Stewart did an interview with Variety magazine where he said that the ideals of Starfleet were in question and that the optimistic bright future that Gene Roddenberry built around the world is a little bit twisted in the Star Trek Picard series. So maybe Starfleet, in fact, was building a task force to invade the Romulan space. So that could be interesting. It's possible. And that's another reason why Picard left Starfleet, because he knew that Starfleet was in the wrong. And that all these lives lost was, in fact, the fault of Starfleet just as much as it was the Romulans, because they were planning to invade Romulan space.
I mean, there is only so much we can say about this episode. It does hopefully tie in well to Picard. We don't have to wait too long. We don't have to wait 13 days now.
Yeah, very close.
Very, very close. But I don't know whether... Obviously, these characters will never feature again.
Well, it's possible we'll see the two girls again. Maybe they'll grow up and join the Picard crew in his adventure to save the race of... To save the girl. To save the woman.
The Borg.
The half-Borg.
Super Borg.
Well, we don't know what she is.
The Porg.
The key to everything.
But anyway, rating out of 10, 4.
4, 5. It didn't do anything. I mean, it wasn't Star Trek. It's the same problem we had with all the other short treks. Once we left the Pike era of the short treks, we were just into this weird unknown that...
Indie developer Star Trek. I've seen webisodes better than that. We didn't enjoy them at all. As an overarching thing, the only one we'd recommend to watch is Q&A. If you're interested in short treks, just watch Q&A.
Interestingly enough, directed by the same person that directed Children of Mars, Mark Pellington.
Yeah, but obviously he didn't have much to work with in this one.
Yeah, because Alex Kurtzman was involved with the script.
About 3 people were involved with making a music video script. I assume that's because it has to tie in with the Picard series and they have to make sure all the details are correct. But 3 people to write one 8-minute show. Okay, folks, so that's the end of our video here. If you like what you see, if you enjoyed what you heard, hit the like button, subscribe, send us a comment. We do enjoy actually responding to comments. We make the effort to respond to people. So we're going to close it out. We have been the Hologrumps. I've been Colum.
And I've been Liam.
Goodbye.